Alrighty. Welcome, guys. So, this is the first video in the series. My name is Deco. Today, we'll be talking about statements and comments in C++. We'll be following the learncpp.com tutorial. It's a great tutorial. I read through it a few months ago. Just a disclaimer, I am not an expert in C++, and I implore you to read through these lessons before we go over it in each video. It's a great resource. Turn off your ad blocker. Make sure you show them love for what they've created. I'm doing this more for my own good. They say the best way to learn is to teach what you've learned to someone else. That way it sticks. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'll switch my view. All right. So here we go. Here's the first lesson, 1.1, statements in the structure of a program. On the right, I have Xcode opened up. I'm using a Mac, so I don't have Visual Studio. But yeah, let's get started. So they have this chapter introduction. I'm just going to skip. You can read yourself. Let's go and get started with statements. So what is a statement? A statement is a sequence of instructions that tells the computer what to do, right? So it tells the computer to perform some action. Statements are by far the most common type of instruction in C++. And not all statements, but most statements end in a semicolon. So on the right here in Xcode, we can see this line right here is a complete statement. It ends in a semicolon right there. So that's one way to identify a statement in C++. In a high-level language such as C++, a single statement may compile into many machine language instructions, right? So that's why it's good to use these high-level languages or higher-level languages, is because we don't have to do all this boilerplate code that says put this value at this address. We don't have to get into the nitty gritty, and that's why C++ is came about originally, because it was so good at memory access for what was around at the time. All right, let's move on. So for advanced readers, we'll go ahead and read this. There are many different kinds of statements in C++. There are declaration statements. So you can declare a function, essentially. So basically a declaration statement would be, let's go ahead and write one right here. Let's just say we're going to write a declaration statement that is a function that returns a integer. So int, int. And it's going to return some number. So we'll just name this function some number, okay? And then we'll use these parentheses here, and then we'll end it in a semicolon because it's a statement, right? And you'll learn what this declaration does and the purpose of it later in more lessons. Everything that goes, or everything that's talked about in these lessons are reviewed multiple and multiple times. Everything is built upon itself. So don't worry if you don't understand all the specifics that you see on the right here. I'm just trying to add a little bit more meat to the discussion. Okay, so let's move forward. So now that we've talked about statements, let's talk about functions. So a function essentially is a grouping of statements together. So right here, this is a function. This is a very important function called the main function. It's MAIN, all lowercase. That's a standard in C++. This is where our program will begin. Don't worry about all these types here. Essentially, if you're curious, this is just for command line arguments. So before the program is executed, you can provide information to the program that might be useful. Let's see here. Let's go back here. We have a rule. So every C++ program must have a special function named main, right? So we just talked about that. And everything is executed, which means it's read, and then it performs some task in order, right? From top to bottom. So this will run, and then this line will run, okay? And then these programs that we start, so we start our program here, it will terminate, and it'll return 0 if it's successful, and it will return some other number if it's not, if we hit an assertion or something like that, which we'll talk about in the future. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, so functions are typically written to do a specific job, right? So this right here, this statement, since we have such a simple program, it's okay to leave it in the main function here, right? So all this line is doing is saying this C string right here, we're actually putting it into a buffer, I believe, and correct me in the comments below on the specifics, but basically this operator allows us to put this C string into a buffer that is then printed onto our console, essentially. But anyways, we can put this statement into its own function if we wanted to. So we can just have, don't worry about the word void yet, but we have void. We'll just name this function right now, right? It's just going to be very basic, right? We put parentheses. Nothing will be in the parentheses now. We'll get to that later. We'll get to a lot of stuff later. And then we could just simply copy and paste this right here. Boom. And now this function has a task, right? So now this function has a purpose. Its purpose is to print hello world. But right now it's not set up to do anything, right? Our program right now is just going to return success, like it ran, hooray. We want it to do something, right? So now we're going to actually call the function. So we use the identifier function. This is the name of the function. So we write that, and then we put 2 parentheses after, and then we finish the statement. So calling a function is another type of statement, I believe. So what this does is call this function here. So what that means is our program will skip to this function and run this line right here, printing hello world to the console. All right, let's continue here. Yeah, so usually you denote a function using parentheses, right? So it's a way to differentiate between a function and a variable. A name of a function or object type is called a identifier. And I'm going to skip this part. You can go over it. We kind of already went over it. It goes through a line-by-line breakdown of that main function, which I think we've already covered pretty good. So let's move on to this next part. Yeah, so all this will be reviewed again, essentially. That's all it's saying. All right, let's touch real quick on syntax errors. So just like any language, English, Spanish, what have you, you can have grammatical errors, right? Same thing with C++ or any other programming language, you can have errors. So right here, we have the semicolon that we're following after this function call. And if we forgot that would be a syntax error. See, look at Xcode gave us expected semicolon after expression. So we need to make sure we catch those. In the compiler, which you'll learn about, actually you learned about if you read the like basic setup chapters, will tell you when something, usually will tell you when some syntactical error is present. Okay. So that's it with the statements lesson. So you can go over that this quiz here by yourself. It's pretty straightforward, just asking you some questions. I think that'll be good for you guys to do on your own. So let's get started with the comments lesson. This will be a quick lesson. Essentially, Comments are a great way to tell not like not exactly what each line of code is doing, but more or less like why you decided to go some route versus another route. You don't want to go, for example, this line. You don't want to have a comment that says prints hello world like that. This doesn't really help you with anything, right? That wouldn't really be a good comment to add. It just clutters up your code. It's just really unneeded. They go into a little more depth here, but yeah. There's two types. So you can do basically a forward slash twice would just give you a single line, or you can do forward slash star star for oh, there we go, automatically did it for me, and this would do multi line comments for you. See, so this is all commented out. It won't run. Okay, so that's essentially comments, a 10,000 foot view of that stuff. Yeah, so comment your code liberally, right? Okay. You can also comment out your code too. So if we wanted to comment out this line, basically, so we don't want it to run, you can hit Command backslash, and that will automatically comment out that line. It might be something else on Windows or in Linux, I'm not sure, so you'll have to check that out, but it's pretty easy. You can go back and forth. Let's see here. Yeah, this is just IDE specific stuff. And I think that's essentially it with comments. So this was really basic, nitty gritty C++ stuff, but I think it's important to go over just to make sure everyone's on the same level throughout this series. And you know, it's just good stuff to go over. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you guys have a good day or good night, and see you in the next one. Thanks.